All right. Hopefully we have some people tuning in with us.
Hello, hello.
If you guys, first of all, thanks for coming. You guys braved the snow. I appreciate it. And for those of you that weren't here, the first class, find it online. There was some good stuff. Basic stuff, but maybe a few things even I learned. Hopefully you guys will too. We're going to start by covering in the second class, starting with amendments versus addendums. A question I've seen on the Central Iowa. I've had agents call me personally and just wondering, when to use what, when to use another. Hey, sit down.
Come on in.
Give me 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
No, we're just starting. We just started. We're covering amendments versus addendums. I look at the words and I've kind of highlighted the two words. Let's cover addendums first. You see the word add in it. Another additional would be a word for that. So I use addendums when you're going to add something to the purchase agreement. We're going to add appliances, garage remotes, shed. Maybe there's a personal item that's being included. We'll put those on addendums, right? The amendments, again, the word itself, amend or to change. An amendment needs to be used when you're actually changing something that was agreed to or addressed in the purchase agreement. We're going to add the wife to the purchase agreement. That's an amendment. We're going to change closing dates that have been agreed on. We're going to extend the inspection time that was agreed upon. Does that make sense? We're going to change earnest money, going to give additional earnest money. Those are all amendments. Changing the price, of course, based on the inspection. We're going to use amendments, not addendums for that. Is that pretty clear for everybody?
Is there any legalities that's involved with that? Because obviously you see it coming all the time. You see it coming all the time. Addendums, change in purchase price, change in close date. I always see them come over.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm guilty of.
I think we'd have to see it challenged in the court of law to say that it wasn't done on the right form. Is that going to be a technicality? I don't know. I just know there is a difference between the two forms in the meaning behind them of what's supposed to be used. Okay, so if we already have a purchase agreement change, or excuse me, if you already have a purchase agreement in effect, and something's agreed to on there, and we're going to change it, we want to amend it. If we're just going to add something to the purchase agreement, then use the add addendum, and then the words themselves kind of give you direction on which form to use, okay? And as long as everybody goes forward with what they've agreed to, you'll never have a problem on either form. It's when somebody doesn't and they're trying to look for a technicality, then I don't know how that will play out.
That's probably something just to talk about just for a minute, because there's things that happen along the way. Somebody doesn't put in an acceptance date, or they have a date that it has to be accepted by and it's accepted after that date. And all this stuff goes on, but what happens is they end up ratifying the document, and the way that happens is they move forward as if that's all good. So, like if you have that where you put in, it's got to be by 5 p.m. on the 28th, and it's signed at 8 a.m. on the 29th, and then after that, people do things. They schedule their inspection. They move forward with financing. You do those things. They then have ratified that purchase agreement. And so it becomes a moot point, because if there are actions after the fact, their actions after the fact have ratified their acceptance of what's in there.
Yeah, the time to use that as a technicality is before you move forward. So that's what because you asked this question the other day.
Yeah, I actually got it with one that got accepted yesterday.
Right.
They moved forward, and I asked her to change it on that.
Yeah, here you go.
So should I?
I would always, if you're consciously thinking of it, change it and have them initial it as you're getting things done. Because what he's saying is so many things have to happen going forward, people honoring both sides of the contract for that to be ratified. You don't want, there is a point with another offer would come in where they haven't gone forward, and now they're saying, listen, we have a technicality here, we have an out. So I would think in the
2 hours late.
Yeah, 2 hours late.
Another offer came in.
I leave that date off of there. Now, this is something Lance can answer. When you put that date in there, it needs to be accepted by that date, right? Not a response to the offer by that date. Or am I wrong in saying which one?
Well, you can look at it, but I believe what it says is that it has to be, the acceptance has to be
honor before this date.
honored before that date and time.
So a lot of times you'll get a counter, but you're giving yourself time, let's say I wrote an offer tonight at 5 o'clock, I want an answer by 9 in the morning. I get a counter by 9 in the morning, but we don't have an acceptance. So either one, leave that part blank so it's open, or two, if you put a date in there and you go buy it, change the date and initial it. All parties
And it
initial.
depends on how you're countering. Some people want to check that counter in the bottom of the purchase agreement, counter offer, and then, add a counter. Some people just
Yeah.
change the offer itself. I'm a fan, if it's fairly minor, it's like just a price change, I'm a fan of crossing through it, putting a new price and initialing, because it stays there. Because I can't tell you how many times it's like, oh, I didn't see the addendum. Or like, dude, it's there. But they either, there's actually forms that are counter offers that you can use. If that's the case, so you have to have it make sense. I mean, if you're going through and you're striking through about 6 different things, and initially, then the purchase agreement tends to get a little rough.
Yeah, and you can write.
Or if you're countering back and forth, and it's, the price has changed, and you're on the 4th time that somebody's wrote a price and trying to initial, you start to lose track of who's initialed and who hasn't and stuff. So at that point, maybe you either go to a counter or you freshen the purchase agreement.
Just make a clean
so-
one, a new one with all the terms that are agreed upon.
Yeah, lenders sometimes have a problem with sloppy.
Yeah, well, you should too when they're too sloppy.
You should
You want
be.
everybody, because you don't want anybody to be so confused, like, hey, listen, we went back in this 3 or 4 times and I forget what we agreed to, so.
Should have been in the days of faxing back and forth. It was really bad.
Yeah, really. Or-
You'd write, and
Well, they
somebody
had
write. and
they
go,
have the carbon copy in the back, which were never really that legible either. But, so we're gonna move on to deeds, and it's important for you guys to know. Now, deeds are something most they're instruments that are signed by the property owners that convey property or rights to a new owner. They should be reported at the county recorder's office, and the documents require a notary, right? Your closers do this for you, but I would also recommend getting your own notary for those times that it's weekends or times that you gotta run somewhere, or you got someone that's maybe they're sick or something and can't get out of the home or something like that. So the one you'll see the most is the warranty deed, right?
Yeah, general warranty deed is the common transfer of property from from seller to buyer. That's generally the way it works. But there's always exceptions, and we have a few.
Now, the general warranty deed not only conveys to the grantee and the grantor's interest, all their interest, but it also guarantees the title is free of any defective clouds or anything like that, okay? That's the highest warranty deed you'll see. You see that most often, right? A special warranty deed is the other type of warranty deed. You won't see this very often, so we won't spend too much time on it. But this is where the grantor's title to the grantee, and there's a promise to protect the grantees against defects and claims after they come up, after you guys have recorded the deed.
If somebody's requesting that, shouldn't that be a little scary?
Yeah,
What's
With
that?
that commercial building, I had somebody request that special. And that makes me
Special
think that
warrant.
they know something's gonna come up. in the future.
Well, what they're saying is that we don't know prior to our ownership, we don't know.
Okay.
So they're warranting their ownership, that nothing from them is going to come up.
Something before then.
Somebody
Okay.
before them, they can't warrant that. And so that's what the special warranty deed is
So,
about.
yeah, so
It's kind of like
it's-
title insurance.
Okay.
So, so all they're saying is that they have done nothing during the time that they've held the property that would in the future impair the grantor's title, okay?
So commercial, I can imagine, they
Right.
probably use that more.
You see a lot of people using quitclaim deeds and stuff, but remember, quitclaim deeds do not guarantee clear title, right? Quitclaim deeds just basically give all your interest to the party you're quitclaiming the deed to. You're just claiming all of your own interest. You see this in divorce situations where a husband and stuff. But you gotta remember that any judgments on that husband or on that wife that's giving the quitclaim deed, they stay with the property. These are child support obligations, any mortgages or any liens, mechanic liens or anything else. The quitclaim deed does not give, they're basically shedding their own interest in the property. Now, if you're a partnership, let's say me and Jeff own some property together and he wants out, that would be the way, is give me a quick clean deed. Give me all your interest. And maybe there's a price to that too, that's something negotiated. But you wouldn't need a warranty deed in that situation, okay?
Yeah, people will, let's say the wife is doing all of the financing and all of that kind of stuff. Some lenders will not do an additional name if that's all they're doing is the financing part and they want the lien against that person. After the closing, you can come in and you can sign a quitclaim deed that then puts it in both of your names. So you can give that, bring that other person on so that husband and wife are actually on the deed. So you do that, and attorneys are notorious during divorce settlements. Is like, the husband has to sign a quitclaim deed or the wife has to sign a quitclaim deed, and then they feel as if they signed that deed and now they're no longer responsible, but they're still liable for the mortgage, any liens that are against the property. The person signing it gets rid of no liability, none. It's all
Just the title interest, just the
It's
equitable
just
title interest.
just their
So-
interest in the property is all.
It's a good instrument, and we use it a lot. Just make sure you're using it correctly, and if you have doubts, seek an attorney's advice or call us, and we'll be happy to give your input. The third one here is the one you'll see is court officer's deed. The court officer's deeds is used during an estate or trust situation. If you're buying a property that's in the executor's name, they will give you a court officer's deed at closing. And basically all it means is the courts open up the estate, they deem this person the rightful heir and the succession of chain of title, and they have the right to give title to the next person, okay? Now, these aren't the only 3 deeds in the world, but these are the ones you'll see the most, with the last one being the sheriff's deed. And of course, this is what happens when you buy a property, the sheriff's sale, you get the sheriff's sale deed. So that's probably, unless you guys are dealing with investors, which some of you do, and I know, Alan, you invest in yourself, you invest in your own properties. If you end up buying something at the auction, which is a cash auction, that's what you should expect is a sheriff's deed, okay? And it just gives them the rights and the ownership. And it pays all the judgments, or at least the court judgments on the property, okay? All right? We're gonna switch this up. Does anybody have a question on deeds? Anybody? You guys see them all the time, but at least know those 4, those are the ones you see the most, with warranty deed and quitclaim deeds being overwhelmingly the most. So these deeds should be recorded within 30 days of execution, and there are penalties for not doing that, okay? Multiple offer situations, if you haven't been licensed long, you'll be in them. If you have been, then you know what we're talking about. But we just want to go over some different strategies, because we certainly have something that's pretty norm here, but there is a different way to handle it if you and your client choose to do it, okay?
It's the most common call I get.
And the key is your client being involved in the strategy. Don't just go rogue and say, this is what I did, and they get mad and say, well, I wish you would have handled it differently. Talk to them about how you feel like you should strategically go after this and see if they agree. And if they agree and they have your blessing, then do it, right? Remember who your principal is. The most common practice is to call for highest and best. Let's use a scenario where Jeff and Andrew are writing an offer on my listing. I tell you guys both, there's an offer on my listing. There's 2 offers, maybe 3, multiple offers. Give us your highest and best, and we would like them by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. Then that's about what you see, and then you're going to tell your buyer to put your best foot forward. You're going to tell your buyer to put their best foot forward, and then we're going to make a decision on which one of you we're going to work with. If you're going to use this strategy, make sure each party has the same information and time to put their best foot forward. Does that make sense? You do have an obligation to be honest with people without giving away your principal's negotiating position, okay? Meaning, if you're the one writing the offer, if I was writing offer on my listing and Jeff was writing offer on my listing and I have a variable rate commission, meaning if I write the offer, I'm giving my seller a little bit of a deal, he should know that. each party should have the same information that way to make the best offer.
So you would straight up say, hey, I'm gonna.
I say, I'm the one writing the offer. It's a question if I'm representing the buyer, I always ask the listing agent, are you the one writing one of the offers?
Right.
Is this a variable rate situation? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know if I'm writing the offer and I'm not, and this is a sticky situation, if you don't feel like, go
Well,
ahead.
it should, if you're gonna do that, if you've talked about that with the seller, it should be checked in your listing.
Yes.
And that's a problem that we have across the whole
Yes.
MLS.
These things are
because
verbal and they
people
should be.
don't. They say, look, if I get an offer, I'll, knock it down a percent for you, because I'm be selling it myself. If you have that discussion, then in the listing, it says variable rate and it should be checked, yes.
And this is kind of my explanation point here, should be in listing. Fair play is key here, okay? Each party should have the same opportunity to make sure they can make the best offer, have a chance. And that other buyer knows that your variable rate commission, do you have to disclose what that is, what the variable rate is?
No, just that there is.
Just that there is one, okay?
And the thing here is that we have a way that we kind of, in this MLS, do it. It is much nicer in this playground than it is in a lot of other places. Much nicer. We actually try to let each other know, that kind of thing. When you go out across the nation and talk, it's all about the client and the client only, and everything else is fair game, except lying. You can't lie. But, you go, in fact, if you just go out of the DMAR area, you'll find places where it's like, you just set me an offer for 150. I like his buyer just a touch better. I call him up and go, hey, look, I got an offer for 150, but I'd rather work with your buyer because your buyer's got, sounds better to me. Would you bump it? And you go, yeah, 152. I'm like, dude, perfect. And I go back to you and go, hey, I got 152. And it's completely.
It's kind of funny.
legit.
It's funny, like, I have you run over that scenario and you have the prices exactly.
Oh, I did?
150, 152. But here's the way, when you talk about, being fair play here and letting everybody know, it's not always price. I mean, it usually is price, right? But it's not always price. Having a strong buyer, being flexible on closing, the type of financing, all this could play into what kind of offer is accepted. I do want to stress that don't feign or lie that there's another offer coming in when there's not, because you will have people who are not competitive, right? They feel like they're going to make a decent offer for your house, and they find out there's another offer in play, which is going to force either a full price offer or more, and they're out. And you've lied, or you have maybe even a white lie that there's more interest by another party than there is. So these people back out, and now you don't get an offer at all for your seller. That's a bad situation if that seller was to find out, because you didn't get an accepted offer. Let's just call it you lied. Where you're in a tough spot as far as your reputation and everything else. So do not do that.
Yeah. Ethics.
And I know we've all been in situations like, damn, this home's on market 5 months. I wrote an offer, and all of a sudden there's 3 other offers on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. But it does happen.
All the time.
And it's happened to me before on the listing side, where it's like you couldn't sell the house, and then 2 months later, all of a sudden it seems like everybody wrote on it at once. It happens. It happens.
Is there anything we can do if that situation comes up where I say I want proof?
No, they do not have to share these other offers.
So if another agent, you think they're lying, there's no way I can find out if there's actually an offer.
No.
Huh.
No. Unless, there is that
I mean, it makes
escalating,
sense.
there is that escalating clause, which we're gonna go over here
I'd love
in a second. We're gonna go over that.
And we're-
This, we're gonna cover more strategies for winning multiple
It's kind
office
of more like
situations.
an ethical.
But the next
Well, what are you looking at up there?
the next strategy is what he was talking
Yeah,
about.
the main thing to remember is in ethics and in agency, you promise honesty to all parties, always. Not fairness. You do not ever promise fairness. That went away a long time ago. But you do promise honesty, both in ethics from NAR and from agency agreement that we do with our clients. So honesty is paramount to everything. You have to be honest. But on the other hand, you need to communicate. I mean, if you've got an offer and it's supposed to be faxed in an hour, you don't have it. But telling the other person, I don't have it yet, but I'm being told. You know, everybody appreciates knowing where you're at. Don't try to be some slick person that's working the angles and stuff. You're going to get caught. You're going to get yourself in trouble, and you're not going to represent your client properly. So just be honest about it and let it fall where it falls.
Yeah, let it work itself out. I mean, the second scenario, what she kind of ran through was instead of going the highest and best to be, is actually going to the next expert and say, listen, they're at 152, or they're at 150, we like your buyer. Will you go 152? What can I go back with them at? And then he, okay, my buyer's at 152. And I go back to Andrew and say, listen, they're at 152. We like their buyer. You know, what are you willing to do? What's your buyer willing to do? And you go up to 154, and you come back and say, hey, I told you I like your buyer, but when I told them we were looking at going the other way, they're up to 154. You got to give me something strong. We want to work with you guys. You know, and you play it back and forth that way. Okay.
And you probably won't deal with those agents much in the future.
Yeah.
People don't like that. People don't like that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Highest and best if you can, but if you really, I mean, if you've got a 20% down buyer and you're FHA, you know, I'm gonna go one time, you know?
Does your seller have to give you permission to do that?
Again, I would talk the strategies out with your seller, and then, you know, and then make sure they're on board. Okay.
Escalator clause.
Escalator
Escalator.
clause. We're gonna cover that now. We're gonna go over, these are strategies,
It can work.
kind of outside the box situations. As discussed, price is not always the reason to accept an offer. So here's a few ideas. First, ask the listing agent questions. You will be surprised how chatty Cathy some of them are, and start opening up the whole principal's file, telling you their motivation, telling you all this. But even if they're not that, they go that route, you might pick up some good information on, well, they're building and it's not done for four months. Now you have a client who's in an apartment month to month that might be able to stretch out this closing and solve a problem for them. And that's really what it's about when you ask questions to the agent or try to figure out. It's about what problem, other than price, does this seller have that my buyer might be able to solve, okay? So closing time and possession is a big part of it. Dealing with older people that want to close on a Friday, but they don't want to give up possession until Monday because they're 92 and going to move slow. I mean, just whatever you can pick up, right? Financing. No, 100% financing versus 80%, 20% down. Strength of earnest money, right? Also, I got 100% buyer here, or even 3.5% down FHA with 500 earnest money, or I got a conventional 20% down with 3,000 earnest money. Boy, someone looks a little stronger than the other one, right? It might be worth a few $1,000s not to worry about, or even the cash. It would be not to worry about that financing. What does it work to you? Okay. What does it work to your principal? Don't need to sell their current home versus someone that can, or it's subject to completion of sale, right? Keeping your offer neat. You know, if you're going to go in, this is just my strategy, my 2 cents worth, but if you're going to go in low, or you're in a multiple offer situation, even closing costs, home warranty, you're just muddying up your chances of getting something accepted. Keep it clean. The cleaner it is, the easier it is to present, the easier it is to come up with the numbers in front of the seller. We asking, well, they want the coffee table and the, you know, and the magnets on the front, all this stuff. What are you doing? You know, we're not buying furniture. All right, that's homemakers. Here we're buying a house. All right, the lawnmower. How many people have the Ryan lawnmower? It's like, you know, give them Sears' phone number. We're not here to buy lawnmowers in multiple offer situations. All right, if you're the only one, and it's during the inspection time and you want to negotiate those things, fine. But if you have a multiple offer situation, the more stuff you put on there that the seller wasn't offering, the less chance you have. Okay. Flexibility of closing. I think we've already done that with the home building scenario. With you know, and that has worked out well for someone not to have to move their stuff twice and move twice. That can be worth as much as $5,000 to people, right? So, and then waiving an inspection. Gotta be careful about this. Gotta be careful. And I have this in here too. You have to be careful on how you advise your clients on this. I'd only recommend this to the savviest of buyers. If I was representing a guy like Alan who's bought I'd have no problems with him saying I'm waiving my inspection. If you were representing me, I'd have no problems. I've bought and sold many homes. I can dive into a home as well.
That's usually how I get the houses.
Yeah.
My offer is no inspection.
Yes. So if you're a savvy buyer, you're representing, and if you represent a true investor, there's no reason that inspection should be on there unless there's some kind of sewer soak they're gonna do or something like that, right? Or they want a couple days to get up in the attic and stuff. It shouldn't be a full-on inspection. I know there are some investors around town that have different philosophies on that and how they go about it, but that's up to them. I'm just giving you ideas of how that might look to a seller, right? Proration of taxes. There's no law that says the seller has to prorate the taxes for your buyer. You don't have to get that credit at closing. I mean, so if taxes are $4,800 a year, and it's a 15-month proration, which is, let's say, $6,000, and you're offering $220 and I'm offering $215 with no proration of taxes, my offer's better, right? If that makes sense. Not a lot of people utilize that strategy, but I think it is a good strategy if you're in a multiple offer situation and you don't want to go up in price, or the lender said, hey, $215, that's it. They cannot afford anything more. And you got this multiple offer situation in a $215 list, knowing it's going to go $220, waive the proration. Seller does not have to prorate taxes. So your buyer's still paying taxes come March and September anyway. So all this does is it's like buying a new construction home. You're not getting that credit. You're coming up with your own closing costs. Personal connection with the seller. This worked. I was a listing agent and 2 offers came in, and one gal wrote this letter to my seller, and it was everything to them. Like, single mom, how well their home, flattering their home, and how she sees her kid playing in the yard. And ended it up. That was it. They're like, the money's the same, we want to work with her. That was it. That's it. So when all things come equal, we used to do this back in the day. We'd actually come and present ourselves to you, the listing agent and the seller, and we'd present the offer in person, and we would open up, telling you something about the buyer.
Yeah.
Right?
Got a lot of deals
Till
that
you
way.
kick out people's houses. It's a whole other story.
Salt of the earth, salt of the earth.
The escalation clause, which we kind of talked about. We've seen this in our market in the last few years. We've actually had verbiage for you and gotten in case this is the route you want to go. This is the strategy, the clause that you can offer a certain amount over what any competing offer is about, provided you show a copy of that offer. And you can cap it up to it. So I'm going to say, I'm going to offer 1,000 more than any competing offer up, it's 150,000, up to 158,000. You cap it, provided you show me the offers for the 157 or whatever, okay? What you do have to be worried about here, or at least advise your principal on, is appraisal. And if you're the listing agent and the buyer does this to you as well, and it's still subject to appraisal, keep in mind, they have maybe escalated this price to a point where they're hoping it doesn't appraise and coming back to renegotiation. So you might just want to address that straight up front, saying this is not subject to appraisal. This appraises at 150, your buyer's coming up with the $8,000. Okay? Does that make sense? Or vice versa. If you're representing the buyer and you're trying to let them know that, hey, this may not appraise, we may want to make this subject to an appraisal, or if it's not, they understand that if it's not subject to an appraisal, they're coming up with a difference.
What if it comes down to,
They don't have the $8,000.
Then don't do the escalation clause with not subject to appraisal.
They might ask
Make
for-
sure that subject to appraisal's in there. And if they come back to you and say, well, accept your offer, but we're taking the
what if
appraisal
you're the
off.
listing agent?
What's that?
What if you're the listing agent? They say, we'll escalate it up to $1,000 over this. You say, well, it's not subject to appraisal now. They come up with $8,000. Then
They
it
don't have to
doesn't
make,
appraise, the lender doesn't give them a loan past that. They're like, well, we-
I mean, you get in, at some point you get back into the financing. Because our purchase agreement has where you check subject to appraisal. But others don't. They don't even put that in there. But the reality is that if it doesn't appraise and they don't have the money to pay the difference, they don't qualify. And then the financing clause kicks in and it goes away anyway, because all they do is show you a note that goes, yeah, house didn't appraise, too bad.
Can you raise earnest money for that? Like earnest money if this doesn't happen and non.
You can make non-refundable.
Take the earnest money by the fund,
Yeah.
don't make this not happen, because now we gotta get, $3,000 earnest money now. If this doesn't happen, we're keeping your 3,000.
Yeah, you can do stuff. Here's the deal, in a purchase agreement, everything in there is negotiable as long as it's lawful. Everything.
See, a lot of times what's happening is the market is manufacturing the appraisers information they have. You've seen that happen in the last few years.
Yeah.
Where you have multiple offers on things, driving prices up, but the appraiser doesn't quite have the past sales to go off of to keep up with it.
Yeah, it's not as bad now. 2 years ago, it was crazy.
Crazy, so you do have
It's
to
like,
be,
oh my
you
God.
do have to have that conversation with people, okay? That, to your buyers, say, hey, we can use this escalating clause as a way to win a multiple offer, and we can keep it subject to appraisal, but should that be negotiated, just know they cross that off and you accept it, that you're coming up with the difference of whatever it appraises and what it does not. That way they can make the decision. All you are is an advisor and the informator. They make the call. Just make sure you advise them correctly and give them their options so they can make the best decision for themselves, okay? Moving on, earnest money and returns. Earnest money by law needs to be deposited in the listing broker's account within 5 business days. I've had people ask me, well, I'm gonna deliver it within 5 days. Well, no, it needs to be in the account within 5 business days. Unless what? Unless it's agreed to by other parties, by both parties. Right? People ask me all the time, can it, could they use, let's say a watch or something? If it's agreed to by all parties, yes, you can. Diamond earring, diamond ring, it doesn't have to be money. Now, it could be certified check, it can be cashier's check. It's normally held by the listing agent, normally, but it could be held by us as a buyer. It's whoever they agree to. If you're dealing with a sell by owner, it can be an attorney that's doing the closing, like Wassler. Okay, I normally when I'm doing it for sell by owner, I'm just going to use our trust account. It's easy because we have the green envelopes and the red box and all that stuff. Okay.
The ass class is over on the spot.
Let me ask you this. You write me an offer with $1,000 earnest money, and 3 weeks later you want to extend the closing that we've agreed to, and I come back and say, provided you give me an additional $2,000 in non-refundable earnest money. Do I use an addendum for that or an amendment?
Amendment. Ooh.
I think it's an addendum.
Addendum, because you're adding.
It's an added contingency.
Lance?
At that point, I'm using an amendment because I am changing an agreed to
Right.
Transaction.
Correct.
I'm changing it, even though I'm just adding more of something, I am changing what has
What's
been
already
agreed
been
to by both parties.
Right. And you're gonna put non-refundable, which there
I just
is.
had that happen to me.
So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I just wanted to
And
do
you know
some-
what, don't get too wound up in all. Michelle called me the other day because somebody did a change, sent it on an addendum, it was all signed, and it was a fairly minor change, and she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, just leave it alone. There's no, don't get in a
Yeah.
fight for
Yeah,
no
this
reason.
is not a huge deal, but just so you know. Let me ask you this, what happens if your buyer puts in earnest money, like an IRA really listing, an IRA calls you back and says, man, these funds were insufficient? Oh, it is gonna
You
happen.
haven't?
Really?
It's gonna happen eventually.
I guarantee
It's
you.
gonna happen eventually. What happens?
You gotta replace with
Like,
cash.
call the what?
My man, what do you have to do?
Replace with cash.
Yes, you do.
Yes, you
That's
do.
it. You get one shot. Who plays the insufficient funds? Does the
Huh?
broker, the listing broker play the insufficient funds? Do we get hit with an insufficient fund?
No.
Do we get an
Damon?
insufficient fund for earnest money that doesn't come through on a check?
Yeah, we would.
Do we pass that on to the,
I don't know.
Try to.
Yeah.
Certainly try to.
we take that on Lance's retirement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Every year I work for this company, I retire a year later.
You are.
Something's going wrong. I don't understand.
If he's here at 85, something went terribly, terrible.
Poor old guy, he can't retire, we can't fire him, so.
And I've never had anybody do something like a watch or a diamond earring, but I do know it is legit if the people agree on it, okay?
You know, one thing to remember too, if somebody doesn't get their earnest money in or something like that, that is not cause to claim cancellation that they haven't lived up to it, okay? That offer is still in effect.
Now, you will have listing agents from other companies that fight this.
Yep.
That will tell you that because you didn't get your earnest, I don't even turn this in to the earnest monies, you know? So,
Shame on you.
yeah, this does not mean we don't have a valid enforceable offer, okay?
Yeah.
One other, okay, we're gonna move on. All parties, to release earnest money. How to get earnest money out. Unfortunately, we can't just look at the contract and say, this is the contract, we're releasing the earnest money to who we feel deserves it. It has to be agreed on by both parties how it's released, and there's a release form in our dot loop that has that identified, okay? And no doubt, whether you've been doing this a year or you've been doing this 28 years, like Lance, you're gonna come across the time,
You shortened it.
30 years. You're gonna come across a time where it's clearly defined who gets the earnest money, because the buyer lost their financing, and the sellers just kicked off a little bit, that they don't get to walk away with $1,000, okay?
Oh, I didn't know that already. Okay.
When this happens, what happens, and Lance, I want you to explain this, because I think you would do this better than me. What happens if we have that situation? Your buyer lost financing, we submit the letter from the lender saying, or you have, saying that the buyer was denied financing, and the seller's like, we're not signing that release form, we want your earnest money. Or the opposite way around, when we're the listing broker.
Yeah.
When-
Okay, first thing always, we all have different purchase agreements. Very first thing you do is read the purchase agreement. What's the clause that there is a financing, it's an inspection? What is the clause that you're using? The first thing is to read that. Some clauses say that if this clause is in effect, then the earnest money is automatically released to the buyer. It's right there. It's easy to see. And sellers like, I'm not releasing the earnest money. Well, dude, you don't have to. You sign the purchase agreement that says the earnest money is going to be released based on this contingency. All they have to do is show that the contingency is in effect. So the second thing is that you have to look at it. Is it a legit contingency that the buyer is invoking? Is it legit? Do they have a denial, a cancellation, or denial of financing from the lender that's legit? Do they have it? If they do, they're probably gonna get their earnest money back. Now, if you wanna, as the listing agent or lister or the seller, if you want to fight it and those things, you certainly can do that. Here's how it works. If you're the buyer, to give the buyer back the earnest money, has to go for 30 days. Once the 30 days has happened, we look at it, brought to us by, you say, hey, check this out. Here's the facts. When we look at it and say, okay, after 30 days, it appears that the buyer should get their earnest money back. That's what the stuff says. And the seller's like, I'm not signing nothing. So you send out notice to all the parties involved and say, our intent is to give the buyer back their earnest money based on this scenario. And then they have an opportunity to respond to that and file something in court. If they don't, buyer's gonna get their earnest money back. We're gonna write them a check, send it to them.
If we're the listing broker.
Hmm?
If we're the listing broker, obviously.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way we're gonna have their.
Well, and that's the only way we're gonna have anything to do with,
Right.
with the earnest money. But if we're going to propose or say that the seller's gonna get it, we have a 6-month period we have to wait. And then we give notice to everybody and say, our intent is to give the seller the earnest money. And absent the buyer coming and filing something, then we send it to the seller. Those are the two scenarios where somebody can get their earnest money back. They are not all of them. If we, me, Rhonda, Jamie, others sometimes, and we look at it and we're like, "God, man, you make a case either way," then nobody's getting earnest money. It does not have to be released. After a period of time, that earnest money is sheets to the state and we go, thank you, we have nothing to do with it. Or if you're going to court, we can actually take that earnest money and give it to the court along with all the responsibility of dispersing it properly. So,
Or we get some lap dances from the big guy.
so it just, those things happen. But when, I get calls from agents all the time, that's bull crap, we should give it back to them. And it's like, I know, I understand.
A cheat is like the worst word in real estate too. You do not want money just going to the state for no reason. Hopefully you can work it out. Scenario when we're representing the buyer, let's say it's a traditional company that has earnest money.
Mhm.
We feel like we've given the financing notice that whatever reason they were denied financing, they refuse. At that point, there's nothing we can do from a broker standpoint. The buyer has to get some type of representation to file a motion. Am I right in saying that?
If they're going after that.
I mean, we can always have a conversation with the managing broker and the listing broker and see, we can't, have them do the same thing we would do, is analyze the contract and say, yes, it sucks for our seller, it's a bad situation, but this is what we agreed to, this is what's signed off on, and we'll go ahead and send out the letter saying we plan on releasing it to the buyer based on this clause.
And then we won't, if the purchase agreement says, if this is invoked, the money automatically goes to the buyer, and that's us, then that's what I do, is I send over the copy of that with that circled and saying, this is what's happening. We should get the earnest money back. And in most cases, the other broker's like, it's agreed to right in the contract.
It's tough to deny.
You gotta let it go.
Right.
Even if the seller's like, I ain't giving that back to them, so it's not your option.
Because the broker of any other company understands what was agreed to, and they're removing themselves from the emotion of it. Us as listing agents and us as sellers and even buyers, we're more emotionally attached to someone who's wronged. And it does suck that 2 days before closing, someone's buyer can be denied financing. But I think we've all been around long enough to know that happens. And, if you want to avoid that from happening, then change your business model. Make earnest money non-refundable for financing reasons. You can do all that stuff. But the way it's written, our purchase agreements, it is subject to financing, okay? You have all kinds of stuff that happens. People get sick, people lose their jobs, people get divorces right before closing. And there's all kinds of scenarios you're going to have of why someone, they make a certain amount of money, but then you find out 3 months is commission and they're newly commissioned, so that hasn't been around for a year yet. So they really don't make that kind of money and their DTI is all out of whack. The best thing you can do is have a nice group of lenders that you trust. They're going to scrub your buyers down. And when they tell you someone's approved, darn it, they're approved. They're really approved. Does that make sense? Subject to sale, subject to completion of sale. Now, how many of you have actually read that entire addendum? No? Get used to reading these entire addendums, because I'm doing this a long time. Lance informed me of something, a year and a half ago, maybe? I had no idea.
Well, and the thing here is understand the two different things. The subject to sale is fine, and we'll go through that, but don't confuse completion of sale with subject to sale.
So we know the difference,
right?
right?
The other day like that, where the agent called me and I talked to the agent. They checked subject to completion of sale. The agent said, well, they don't have to sell it. I'm like, okay, but they want to because they want to use the money as down payment. But, well, that's not subject to completion then.
Yeah.
That's subject because they didn't even have it listed. They didn't have the house listed. So you have to make sure you're checking the right box.
And on a side note to this, if someone gets a subject to sell, ask them, are they listing it with you? Are they listing it with a full realtor? No, they're going to go for sale by, you can make sure that's their prerogative, but you need to take that information to your seller. Okay? So a subject to completion of a sale is when you already have your buyer's home under contract and they're trying to buy another property. It could be subject to completion of them obtaining their proceeds from the sale of their home. Self-explanatory? If you're gonna list their home, make an offer subject to sale of their home, we're getting ready to list their home, then it is truly a subject to sale and we need this rider attached, okay? A couple things on here I wanna again, this whole point of this class is to curb your learning experiences so you don't have to learn things the hard way like him and I have over and over and over and over and over again. First of all, this does expire. This date in here, you put, if I was writing a subject to sale today, February 5th, I might have this sometime the end of March or mid-April or end of April. This does, my father, it does, and you can ante back up when this expires if everybody wants to, but this does have an expiration on it. If your home's not sold by such and such date, it's over, okay, unless we ante back up and extend it, okay? Here, down here, seller shall have so many hours excluding weekends and holidays. If you're representing the seller, never exclude weekends and holidays, ever, okay? Cross that out in its initial runway.
And don't accept 48 hours.
Never more than 24 hours,
What about 72?
ever.
That's
You understand?
That's every
Does everybody understand those two things? If you have those two things, you got this out of this little blip here, then I'll be happy. No more than 24 hours, no more excluding weekends and holidays. Real life scenario here. Someone come in Friday night, wrote an offer on a property. I tell them, hey, we have a subject to sale on this. It's excluding weekends and holidays. It was like 48 hours. Guy walked away from it. He was from Chicago. He's like, nope, I'm buying a house this weekend. And if you can't tell me that I have this house before I leave on Sunday, which you couldn't, excluding weekends and holidays, I'm gonna go buy something else. And we lost that buyer. Never weekends and holidays.
Yeah, you have to think through this a little bit. What would be the purpose of giving that person time?
Yeah. What?
Huh?
Keep going.
No, because I like putting
No,
them on.
this is what we're gonna submit for our buyers.
Oh, you're.
I'm not telling them what to accept.
Got it.
Now, if I'm representing a buyer, it's always 48
Yeah,
hours.
I go
It's holidays,
72,
okay?
72
It's always-
hours.
Now, a savvy listing agent's gonna correct you, but sometimes you don't have them. In fact, a third of our agents in the market are less than a year old, so.
You have to have a reasoning behind why you're putting timeframes in or why you might possibly accept a time frame. I mean, here's the bottom line. If somebody's buying my listing, and yeah, I love that one.
I love that.
If somebody's buying my listing and they want to do subject, you better be able to convince me that they have the ability to finance without selling. If they don't, why do you need 12 hours? Why do you need 24 hours? If they can't buy it and I get another offer that I want to accept, then I'm going to give you 0 hours. I'm
And
going to give you notice.
that's the next
period.
clause.
You're out.
You don't have to give 24 hours. It can just be upon notice. This becomes null and void.
Yeah.
Okay? So you can do that as well. Now, something I want to tell you for you representing your buyers that are on subject to sale. I want you to have this conversation with them when you're writing the offer subject to sale. If they feel like they can finance this home, not only could they, but would they, should another offer come in and they're going to get bumped, then you need to speak to the lender and get that letter now. Because what happens inevitably is you're going to get served on a Saturday or a Sunday. The lender you're going to try to contact isn't going to be around or tied up with something else. And the buyer isn't going to be able to make that decision. What you want to tell your buyer is like, listen, I just want a letter on file that says that you can buy this home without the sale of your home. That way, if the scenario ever arises, the decision is yours of whether or not we're going forward or not. Okay? I want the decision to be yours. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, where I learned something new in this last year is it all depends. If you're in a situation where you have a subject to sell offer on a home, it's accepted, you got the home listed, you're praying for a fast sale so you can remove the contingency. And then all of a sudden the seller comes back and says, I'm giving you notice. We've accepted another offer. Your 24 hours is in effect. If that buyer of yours wants to buy that property, they have to show that seller that they can afford that property without that contingency. Even if they got an offer on their home that day,
Sucks.
it cannot be subject to the completion of sale of that property at that point. It's all about who serves you notice. Now, the other way around, let's go back and let's say you have the subject to sell offer on it, you have your buyer's property listed, they get an offer, they accept it. Now you can submit the notice to the seller. We are removing our contingency and bringing this down to subject to obtaining proceeds from the sale of. And that's what this addendum goes over. It goes over who serves the notice. If the buyer serves the notice that we're removing our subject to sale contingency, now it's subject to completion of sale, that's what we've agreed to in this addendum. If the seller comes and says, you're still trying to sell that home, and said, we accept another offer, here's your notice, you have to prove that you can afford it without the contingency.
Now, the misconception on that, and I've talked to, I bet 50 agents that think you have 24 hours to get an offer. That's not the case.
No, you have 24 hours to notify them you can afford it without the contingency.
Okay, so it's like, if, for me, if my sellers / buyers think they can, then I'm gonna say, let's get pre-approved, let's get that letter, let's get ready, so that the only decision they have is when it's time. If they don't have an offer on their property and somebody does, they get notice on that, and they've got 24 hours. That means they have that much time to think through. Are we willing? Are we willing to take the chance? Are we having enough showings that things going, looking good? Buyers seem to be interested. Couple of people out there thinking, are you at a point where you're willing to take that chance because you really like that property? But that's not the time to think, oh my God, make a decision. We got to call the lender, see if will they approve us? That's wrong. Set them up so that the only decision they have is, do we want to? And if they do, send the papers and say, here's our financing, we're good to go. And try to push the closing out. Maybe you can push the closing out 60, 90 days past that. Say, look, we're going to do this, but we need to bump that. And then you've got a little bit more time to try to get it sold and get the offer and get it closed and be in good shape. All right. So think through this and understand it. And like Matt said, here's the whole deal. It's who notifies who. Seller notifies, then you got to prove. Okay. Buyer notifies, then you're back into like the purchase agreements, just like it is. And it literally is down to that second and who can show it. Because I've seen them, they're 1 hour apart. Dude's like, sweet, we got our offer, we can get notice. And just as they're getting ready to, they get notice. We got another offer on the property. You're celebrating like crazy and you don't have a leg to stand on at that point. You better figure out how you can get financing because it ain't gonna work. Now, you can try to talk to the other agent if they don't understand it well enough. Maybe like, hey, we got an offer, we're good to go. And they might go, oh, okay, cool. But the reality is,
yeah, we just have the same situation. We got bumped the other day, and had we got an offer on ours, they still would have honored it. He told me that. And he knew the score, but he liked our offer, our people better than the other ones. It's their prerogative. They can go whatever one they want. Maybe the offer that was acceptable to them on our offer is a little bit better than they were willing to do with someone without a contingency. So if we were able to show some kind of good faith and say, hey, we can make this subject to completion of sale now, that's up to the listing agent and the seller to decide which route they want to go. But
they have
certainly
to be careful. If that seller has accepted the other offer, they've lost that option at that point.
What's that?
They don't have the option to go, hey, we gave notice the other one that they're going to perform because they can't perform. So you got to be careful. The wording in this, if I call you and go, I have accepted another offer, then the decision is over.
Under the 24 hours.
The 24 hours is there, but you have to, it shows right there, it's not subject anymore. There's
no, I understand, but
this completion.
The seller can still accept the that's subject to completion of sale. It is their call.
Not if we go to court,
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
All right. Will you agree to disagree? Dual agency. I think both people, everybody in here has probably done a dual agency or will do, play in their life. Obviously, the addendum, we have to have the buyer brokerage agreement signed. We have to have the seller appointed agency signed, not the buyer brokerage, I'm sorry, buyer appointed agency, the seller appointed agency, whether you're listing or buying something. But there is the dual agency that has to accompany, if you're representing both parties. There is a separate form. She's got it up here. We have the address of the property, obviously up top. We have the name or names of the appointed agent for the seller, right? And it goes over what you can do, you can't do, and what you must do. And I would recommend everybody, read through this with me, and that way you can properly summarize it. And I'll have Lance summarize it at the end. Obviously, what you can't do is you can't give information to either party that would put them in a disadvantage when negotiating. Okay? Does that make sense? And that goes for either one. You can't imply that the seller is willing to accept less than asking price for the property. You can't say that the buyer is willing to pay more for the property, right? If I'm on a $150,000 listing and I'm representing both parties, I know I can get $150,000 accepted. What you offer is up to you. That doesn't mean, we go back to what you can do. You can provide a market analysis and how you arrived at that $150,000 for your seller and show market research. Whether your buyer comes in at 145, you don't present that saying, hey, my buyer's 145, but I know he'll do 148. You can't do that, okay? Now, when I explain this to my clients, I just tell them I can't put them at a disadvantage. I can't reveal any motivating factors or really take weight in what they offer. The negotiation kind of has to play out between them, okay, without me giving unfair representation to either, okay? That goes over leasing and things like that. But seller real estate needs, buyer real estate need, the seller's financial information, the buyer's financial qualifications. What dual agency can do, we already said provide helpful information about the property, respond accurately to questions about the property, disclose the seller's ability to sell or lease, the buyer's tenant's ability to buy or lease, explain the terms and the procedures that are outlined in the contract, the benefits of protecting the buyer and how to protect the buyer with inspections and things like that, help them find alternative financing, whether it's NFC or IFA grants or whatever. Then I already told you provide information about comparable property so they can make an educated decision on what similar properties have sold for in the area. And then also assist them with seller's disclosures and other forms that are required as well. Now, what you must do, and again, act honestly and in good, be honest and act in good faith. Exercise reasonable skill and care. We kind of went over that in the last, what that might mean. You are under legal obligation to disclose any material adverse facts that you have knowledge of, okay? And you will have sellers, if you do this long enough, that says, hey, we have to clear out our sewer line every, twice a year, but we don't want anybody to know that. You think, sorry, I have to disclose anything you tell me to all parties. I recommend we get somebody in here and let's take care of that, okay? Material adverse facts of the disclosure which is prohibited by law. Material adverse facts that are known to a person who possesses possession on behalf of the party. Lance, what do you mean by the material adverse facts of disclosure which is prohibited by law?
Well, there are certain things you can't. You can't use them as information. Somebody of this nationality lived here. Somebody that there's protected classes. So you have to be careful about, talk about that. You get into scenarios where somebody goes, well, tell me about the neighborhood. And you start talking, well, the average income is this, and the houses are this and that, and they're like, no, I want to know the color of the neighborhood.
And you have actually
Kinda.
people from
That's
fair
not
housing
happening.
that will call you and,
Huh?
and they're testing you.
Concrete color.
They are testers.
Oh,
We actually did it internally one year. Had a company call all of our agents and, like a secret shopper type secret tester. And there were a few things that were said that we're absolutely appalled by.
Mhm.
I mean, that you would not expect, like someone of our caliber, of our brokers to say that. In fact, one of the words was lily white, if I remember right. The neighborhood. What's this neighborhood like? Oh, it's lily white. Like, that is like the worst thing you could ever say in any situation like that. So there is enough research for anybody to figure out sexual predators, crime in an area, all that stuff's online now. You don't need to get involved in providing that information other than maybe some sources of where they can find that information. Okay?
You can provide that. Socioeconomics is the real basis for everything. Okay? Socioeconomics is the decision maker. It's everybody lives a certain lifestyle, particularly in a certain area. It has nothing to do with race, creed, religion, color. None of that has anything to do with that.
Right.
It's socioeconomics. As long as you discuss socioeconomics, you're fine. You step outside of that, even by just a tiny bit, you're in the wrong area. Don't go there. It's ridiculous.
Now, you will inevitably have someone who's uncomfortable with dual agency. They're usually attorneys. And you can assign, or your brokerage can assign another agent to represent them. Me personally, one time I had I'm listing, the buyers were attorneys. They did not want me to be a dual agency. I took another agent from my office. I paid her a flat fee to represent the buyers. I still got the majority of the commission. She agreed to the price, and as long as you have that agreement, that works. Okay? But don't by any means force any kind of agency on anybody. It's their decision.
And if you're gonna do it right. Something like that. Don't be like, hey, I've worked this all out and everything. All you do is write the shit down on the piece of paper. That's not how you do it. If they're going to be that person's agents, you have to completely relinquish all of that. All that agency, everything has to go to the other party, and you have to make sure they are representing those people. If you try to be involved in there and you're like, don't do it. You're giving your
These
agency
buyers are
away.
going to be sellers one day, and if I know you handled my sell like that, and I was a buyer, and you're giving me information I know you shouldn't know, I might be appreciative of it from this side, but once I'm on that side, no way I'm hiring you. But if you hold yourself to a higher ethical standard, I might not get the information I want of you, but my perception of you is that you are a highly ethical, moral person that can be trusted. And I will use you on both sides. And more important, I probably refer my friends and family to you as well. Okay? So when you think you're doing a solid with somebody, you're really cheapening our profession, and you're cheapening your own self, in my view, okay? And we've seen some people, listen, dual agency is the number one thing. Dual agency disclosures, agency disclosures are what you're gonna be in trouble over most, okay? Let's get to something a little bit more lighthearted. Four ways to protect your buyer. You guys all know these things, but when I'm with the buyer and I'm going over and I tell them specifically, there are 4 ways to protect yourself when you're buying a home. I want to walk you through and take advantage of all 4 ways. That way we know we've done everything we can do to protect your interests, okay? The first one is review the seller's disclosure. Do not just hand your buyer or queue it up on Dotloop, send it to your buyer with all the other forms to sign without reading it yourself. Read the seller's disclosure. Is there something vague on there that we need more explanation of from the listing agent or the seller? Is there parts of it missing or not filled out correctly? Right? And I tell my buyers, sellers have a legal obligation to disclose any material defect of which they have actual knowledge of or could not be discovered by a reasonable inspection. I'm pretty much sure that's verbatim what's in the purchase agreement, okay? And that's licensed law. That's not because we just want to be more transparent. That is actual Iowa law. Inspection is the second way to protect your buyer, or they can protect themselves. Mr. Buyer, Mrs. Buyer, in our purchase agreement, we're going to make sure we carve out enough days for you to have property inspected by the person that you feel most comfortable with. I'll provide you 3 or 4 or 5 names of people that I know that are certified through the state of Iowa and insured, okay? I might, it's a lot of times I go and also like, feel free to go off that list if you want to, but recognize that Iowa does not regulate licensees of inspectors. So if you choose to go off that list, you might be going after someone who hasn't gone through the training and not insured, okay?
Yeah, so they're not, in the state of Iowa, they're not licensed, but they can be certified. There's no licensing.
So they don't have to be certified to inspect them?
No, there's no regulation of license. It's like the only thing in Iowa they don't have licenses for.
So does the
Literally,
bank-
you could
does the
start
bank
your own
prefer,
company tomorrow.
Certified,
Does what?
does the bank prefer certified
The
inspector?
bank
then?
doesn't care.
That bank doesn't do anything with it, no.
Yeah.
No,
So I can just have my buddy take a look and be like, hey, this is
yeah,
what I want done.
Yeah,
That's it.
you can.
yeah.
You know, if you've got an
I just would
inspection
not
club,
recommend that for your clients.
I
I
mean,
mean, for
Uncle
you,
Harry.
For me, yeah.
but for your clients, don't say, hey, I just know this HVAC guy, he'll come through and he'll look at the whole thing. Don't do that. Now, here's the problem you're gonna run into, is your buyer's gonna say, my Uncle Ed knows everything about houses, we're gonna get Ed through. We're like, hey, are you prepared to be mad at Uncle Ed if he misses something? Because that's what's gonna happen. You know, Uncle Ed don't have the gas sniffers and the whole thing, you know, he's gonna come through. Uncle Ed can be here during the inspection is what I would recommend. Say, hey, hire an inspector that's gonna do everything, have Uncle Ed here. So,
and dads are terrible to have them do inspections. Don't have dads come.
and then the other thing is,
We're bad.
obviously, we know once the inspection's done, and I tell this to the buyer, don't leave it till after the inspection, or even during the inspection. Leave it at the time of the offer. Inspection, we're gonna look for structural, mechanical, and safety issues. Those 3, can you remember that? Structural, mechanical, and safety issues. That way they don't come in there looking for you to recaulk a bathroom tub or fix a screen hole. That's not what we're looking for. Okay, we're looking for bad HVAC, bad plumbing, all the mechanics in the home. We're looking for the structural, and we're looking for safety issues. And safety issues can be small. They can be a window that's painted shut. It's a safety issue if there's a fire, my kid can't get out the window. It's a safety issue if there aren't fire or smoke detectors. It's a safety issue for handrails. FHA looks at that stuff. I mean, even just leveling the concrete with FHA will look for. You know, those are safety issues, trip hazards, lead-based paint, radon. These are all safety issues, okay? That extension relief valve that goes on the water heater so the hot water doesn't spray all over the kid's face. These are all small items, but they're safety issues. So that's what we're looking for. Set the expectation with your buyer up front. That way they don't go in there and go like, what's this little crap in the drywall, you know, right? That's a cosmetic deal. It can be. Sometimes large cracks can be structural. Say that. And then also when you're writing up your inspection addendums, you want to be very, very, very specific, right? I see too many vague inspection requests, and you want to replace the outlet in the 2nd bedroom east wall, you know, dead outlet. You know, be that specific. Window sills rotted, 2nd floor, 2nd bedroom dormer. You know,
How
both
common
windows.
is it to send the home inspection report with what needs to be done?
Yeah, I mean, it is the buyer's inspection report, so I talk with them about it, and you might be able just to send the pages that are relevant to the inspector without sending them a
Well,
whole
what I really like
report.
with the inspection things on this side that people have sent me is like they put in there, we need this and this in place, see.
Inspection report.
Yeah, you get pictures.
Do whatever,
right.
pictures
Yeah,
basically what
yeah.
I'm getting at.
Well,
Absolutely.
and then you might have the agent that says, and I would not recommend this as a buyer's agent personally. Do not put more onus on the seller to inspect something that you're unsure of, or your inspector was unsure of. Your buyer needs to hire someone who's gonna represent their interests, not me, hey, seller to hire a roofer to come in and make sure the roof is structurally. I mean, you really want the seller to hire somebody for your buyer to make sure, because I'll call 5 guys I know that have construction behind their name that can get up there and tell me that roof's just fine. I don't know that you want that. The buyer, it's the buyer's inspection period. If there's something wrong with the chimney, the buyer needs to get the chimney person in there to look at it, right? Don't put it on the onus for the seller to do more inspections for your buyer. And I see that a lot coming from the other side, from other brokerages.
And the seller sometime will say, hey, look, I need a few more days because we need to have somebody come in and look at that. I don't even know what I'm talking about. He said, you know, for a repair. if I'm working with my seller, I'm not gonna let them sign, we're gonna fix this unless we're pretty dang sure of what it's going to cost.
Yeah, and that's another thing too, and that's when you're on the listing side, a lot of those inspection agreements, you have 48 hours to respond. And if you need to get pricing for things, because like he just said, your seller needs to know what they're looking at, then we need to amend the purchase agreement and change the dates for response. Say seller would like, X and X number of days to respond to inspection to get pricing on what was requested. Now, taking your example, what happened recently, he had the property inspected, and because it fell into a certain time frame, I always say from like 1941 to 1960, 63, you should advise your buyer to have a sewer inspection, even though it could collapse your whole deal, but it's better to show that you help them avoid a potential $4,000 to $15,000 mistake, and that bond between you and that buyer will be permanent. But it does happen. He came in, he had one of our buyers, they did a sewer inspection, and they really couldn't tell if it was broke or not because there were roots coming through the sewer. So we needed more time to clean that out and then have it re-inspected. Make sure you don't just say, seller to have sewer line cleaned out if you know you're gonna re-inspect it. It's seller to have sewer cleaned out for buyer to have an opportunity to re-scope in camera to determine the functionality or the condition of the sewer. Make sure you give yourself more time with that seller to say, we want you to pay for the clean out, but we reserve the right to come back and re-inspect this to make sure the line is in good shape. In this situation, it was not. It was broke at 45 feet, so could have been, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
So
Question for you, Matt. Okay, so if Uncle Ed comes in and does this inspection and notes 4 different items, and you put that in an addendum, is there something that states that, since they don't have to be certified or licensed or anything, that if they ask for proof of that, you get what I'm trying to say?
sure.
Or like if I
Proof
went
from the
through-
inspector?
Uncle Ed was the inspector.
Yeah, I know, but
Right.
what proof are you talking about?
So like if Uncle Ed comes in and says,
Basically, Uncle Ed won't write a report.
Right,
to him.
right.
You have nothing to show them besides on what
Then
Uncle Ed said.
you, as a listing agent, you counteract that with a professional.
okay,
So Uncle Ed says, these circuits aren't good, I have an electrician come in and say, they are.
okay.
So
So,
Uncle Ed
yeah.
says the roof's bad, I'll get, Diva Roofing and someone, maybe another one that shows I'm in
So
Barstow
pretty
to
pointless
show
to
that
have
this roof is in good shape, okay?
Hey, listen, as you're doing that too, they have a little common sense, okay? I see people saying, the trim on the front window is bad. I want a licensed contractor to do that. Okay, there isn't one. Okay, the contractors aren't licensed. Now, if you want somebody that's certified or something like that, word it so. But I see that all the time. All work be done by licensed contractors. Plumbing, electrician, yeah.
Yeah,
Heating
HVAC,
and
yeah.
cooling, it's
Roofing.
certified. Some of them don't
Yeah.
have licenses. They're big companies.
But windows are
about it.
just carpenters and things like that.
Yeah.
But could you put on here, and I'm asking this for my own knowledge, could you put up on there to buyer satisfaction? Outside window seals to be replaced, primed and painted to the buyer satisfaction.
You can. I'm
That's
gonna
pretty
come back
yeah.
to you as a seller and go, you better be telling me what you're looking for then. Because I'm not gonna go fix a bunch of stuff and have you come in and go, yeah, no, I don't like it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not doing that.
Yeah, that
Because
scares me.
As soon as you do
Yeah.
that, I'm gonna say, okay, then you find a contractor.
Wouldn't you just be cleaner to make a concession on your sale price at that
It
point?
is absolutely cleaner. It's absolutely cleaner and better to have the buyer do any work with
Yeah.
getting money back, but sometimes you can't. FHA or something like that prevents that from happening. If it comes to light, underwriters, they're like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on.
But what you could do is have a bid from someone the buyer trusts, and that bid be paid out at closing for the work. You could better have someone you trust, because that contractor is being paid before the work's done, but that can go on as an invoice or.
Yeah,
something
no,
like
I
that.
totally agree with you. If I'm the buyer representative, I don't want the seller doing work.
I don't want them either. They're always gonna take the path
sure,
of least
disrupt
resistance.
it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I would always have my buyer, because at the end of the day, if they're not happy with the work order, was something faulty, but the buyer's the one dealing with it. And so you want them to be comfortable with the person that they use, because the seller will inevitably take now, the third way to protect yourself is a home warranty. And we got the HNS home warranty for the company. I just explained to my buyers, this is a third-party insurance company. There's a deductible with every call that you put in, but it covers the majority of the mechanical items in the home. Here's the brochure on it that shows what it's covered. I need you to either pay for the coverage yourself, ask the seller to pay for it, or waive it, one or the other. And we see these more common in offers, asking the seller to pay for them, private, anything. But certainly the buyer can pay for them. Then you tell them this is something they can ante back up for every year if they want to.
How's that work, Jamie, if we don't get that?
Get the home warranty?
The waiver or
Oh,
the
you
accept?
won't get paid.
I know that seems harsh, but all you gotta do is be in court one time for it.
Yeah.
And we have.
This is the last part to protect yourself, and this is the one that some people put into their business plan sometimes and put them, don't other times, depending on whether they like the person, depending on whether they have the time. I'm telling you, you do this always with everybody, and that is the final walkthrough. This is the last way to protect your buyer. 4 ways to protect your buyer: to review the seller's disclosure with inspection clause, with the home warranty, and we have the final walkthrough. Final walkthrough should be done, in my opinion, 48 hours before closing. The reason why not 24 is because if there is an issue, they literally give me no time to deal with it in 24 hours. I can't get people out there. We're talking about pushing back closing, which there's an expense and a hassle with that. So 48 hours is my recommendation. And you need to explain to your buyer at the time of the purchase agreement, hey, the home may not be vacant, because they feel like in their own head that they're walking into, if they should see the home vacant, the way they're going to get it. And sometimes you will, right? The home could have been vacant at the time you bought it, could be new construction, and that's completely different with the final walkthrough. They might have moved out before, but typically, right, the seller is buying something else, relying on you to fund them so they can fund their next purchase, and then we got all these people moving. So I've had it at times when we get to the final walkthrough and the buyer's disappointed that the home's not vacant, so I have that conversation with them up front, you know, when we're filling out the offer, that it may not be vacant.
My concern with that, if you guys see we have different
styles.
opinions, you know, my concern is always that they're in the process of moving out. They have a moving truck in the driveway and they're loading stuff up. And my buyers have negotiated to have 3 different appliances done, you know, left in the property and that kind of stuff. So what happens when we close, sign off everything, they walk in, the refrigerator is gone?
Yeah, I fortunately have not ran into that yet, because, you know, I seal everything up nice and neat. No, that's a good, you know, maybe you do 2 different walkthroughs. But the bottom line is they may not be moving out until after you close anyway. So there is no opportunity to actually see the home vacant before you close.
Here's a real pain. And you do the walkthrough and it's 24, 40 hours before you go and stuff like that. And your buyers are ready to go, everything like that. The people have moved, you close now, and you hand them the key. They go over, they walk in, and they're like, the toilet is broken. It's cracked.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't. And I called the sellers or called the seller's agent, and they're like, no, it was fine when they walked out. Buyers must have done something. What do? Pain in the butt. If you got keys, the people have moved out or done something after your walkthrough, then meet them at the house and go in as a representative so that when you walk in the door, if something's wrong, you can take a picture. Because now you're not a disinterested third party, but you're not the buyer. Okay, so it's a pain in the butt. It's, you know, it's hard to do, but this is the world we live in right now, as people are moving last second, you know, all that's going on.
Yeah.
And yeah, sure, most time it works out, but the one time it doesn't,
You're prepaying for a new toilet.
you're buying something,
Plumber.
you know.
But that's, you know, this reality of it is we know we all close on Friday. And the first chain's moving right away, but they're not moving till they can't get access to their home till Saturday, which doesn't give access to our home we purchase until Sunday. All that stuff's part of our business. But I go in 48 hours and I tell my buyer we're there to do two things. We're there to make sure the property is in the same condition as it was when we bought it, and we're there to make sure any of the results of our inspection, if we ask them to do anything, that it was done to our satisfaction and proof of receipts and things like that. So I keep it pretty short and sweet on the 4 ways to protect themselves, but that's what I'm there to do. And obviously there is some normal wear and tear. Sometimes you can expect when people are moving out, they might scratch a wall and things like that. That happens.
So like if they do that, if you're doing that, and everything's normal, and then an hour before I walk in with them and then I find out there's a huge circle that was cut out of carpet underneath the bed that we never saw.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Now,
So
there's two things that they'll talk. One, I never close on Friday. I always close on Thursday because I want that day. So I always close on Thursday. I schedule them for Thursday and then, close Thursday. It may not even fund till Friday, but I close that time because I want it all done. And then I may give the seller, Friday and part of Saturday to move, something like that, but I don't close on Friday. So that's another little difference.
Well, I've heard
Never
people
had-
say that too, because everybody's competing
Yeah,
for that Friday, end of the month type
Yeah.
thing.
I don't do it.
Thursday's easier.
She loves me because I close on Thursdays.
Everybody closes on Friday.
So
So
yeah.
that's,
So
That's a
that's
good point.
something. And then here's the other thing. Make sure you understand this. At the bottom of the purchase agreement, it says that the purchase agreement survives the closing. So just because you signed, just because you got the keys, just because you started to move in, if something is missing or wrong or something like that, that purchase agreement is still in effect. And all the agreements that you have in that purchase agreement are still there, unless you're buying a foreclosure or something, they wipe that all out. But in normal circumstances, if somebody moves the bed and there's a hole in the floor, that's a non-disclosed item. It would come underneath that, and certainly suit is available. Or if they take the refrigerator and you have in writing that it was supposed to be left, you have recourse because the purchase agreement is still in effect.
and that happens.
Probably only if we, like you
Yeah.
were saying, they'll show up with them, because I mean, they can take the fridge out, go.
Well,
hide.
they
And it's-
can.
it's not-
Yeah, I mean, if
it's-
somebody
it's-
wants to, you
it's-
can find a way.
It's material defect that a reasonable inspection wouldn't, no one's moving the bed, no one's moving the furniture around, right?
Right.
So that would probably fall under that. And material defect is defined by anything that would affect my decision to buy or what to buy a property for. It might affect, it's very reasonable to believe that if I knew there was no flooring there or something, that my offer would have been different.
Yeah.
Or, so I feel like you had something. The problem is that your buyer's stuck with the same thing, and that's if you can't find a reasonable people, they're stuck pursuing legal action. And no one wants, if you feel like you've been wrong, you're really wrong, you might do it, but no one wants to, you hate to see people go out, have to do that. But that's the reality of our business.
You get a read on people. Get a read. I mean, how's the agent acting? Are they, people you've worked with before? The sellers seem to be, they're like, yeah, absolutely, we'll take care of that. They got receipt, always get receipts, no matter what contractor, licensed, unlicensed, anybody like that. If you just say receipts, that changes the level of the service being provided in most cases, unless you're dealing with, because you've got, people you can call that will just write the receipt. But
Well, I would not do, I don't do that. I'm saying you could, and it's not a line for people to have people like
But,
that.
if you require a receipt from a contractor that says, they've done the work, then they put a little liability on that contractor that's actually been done. So receipts, certified contractors, receipts available, that kind of thing, so that they're there. And you get them ahead of time, but take a read of your clients or their clients. What are they like? How are they dealing with you? Do you have some comfort that things are going to be good? I mean, you go all the way from the person who takes the 4 things out of the garage that they wanted and leaves everything else for you to clean up. Or you have the person who cleans everything up and hires somebody to come in and make the house spotless for the new buyers. They're different people. And you get surprised every once in a while, but generally speaking, and that, by the way, that's a really good clause. It's in our purchase agreement now, the personal property clause.
Yes.
Is it in there now?
What's considered, what needs to go, what stays, what goes, what's considered real property. It does say anything that's not considered real property, not agreed to.
It wasn't in there
Should be
before,
removed.
so.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, and this is on more on the listing side, not the buying 101. But this goes, I think, for your whole business plan. The more that you can set expectations up front rather than having to deal with them when they happen. And that's, right now, someone's closing on a house today and their driveway is 6 inches of snow. You can have that conversation with your seller saying, hey, in the event this happens, this is how we need to address this. We need to leave this property clean in the way that you would expect it or you would want it if you were moving in. We can't leave anything that's not been agreed to or considered real property. And this is what's considered real property. If it's attached, it's real property. Your TV mounts, your curtain rods, your blinds, your faucets, right? Your light fixtures. These are all bushes outside and plant. They're all considered part of real property now. So if we have this conversation with them up front and they nod their head, hey, it's June. I know you're moving out 3 weeks early. Do we have plans to have the lawn mowed maybe 3 or 4 days before we close or the day of closing? Oh yeah, I'm glad you mentioned something. I didn't know we were gonna have to do that. Last thing you want your buyer doing, or any buyer, is moving in with 1.5 foot of grass. Because all you had to do to avoid that situation was set expectations with your seller. They were good people. They would have done it. You just didn't have a conversation with them and they didn't think through it. It's your job to think through it because you're the professional and you've been through this hundreds and hundreds of times and we'll be going through it hundreds and hundreds of times. Think through the problems that have arose and then curb them by having conversations with your people up front about it. Not at the time that they're a problem. Because closing's stressful. Closing's moving sucks. I mean, you guys have all moved. It sucks, right? I don't care if it's winter and 6 inches of snow or it's 120 degrees out. The physical act of moving sucks. So the last thing you want to do is come at them with a bunch of crap when they're all stressed out and you're going to get a snap buyer to sell. They're going to snap on you. And that's not the way.
We do have a form for that, just in case. I mean, virtually nobody uses it, but it's a great form.
What's that one? Oh,
That's your final walkthrough.
final walkthrough. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
I would actually use that form quite a bit,
You
just
should.
to show that the property says whether it's vacant or occupied and whether, that way, you can also show that you treated everybody you represent the same. Okay?
So it has all those things, so you can do a final walkthrough, you can, sign off on that kind of thing. It's a nice thing, rarely used form. Jamie, did you know he was there?
I did.
Yeah, yeah, so
Matt,
that's
do you want to look at the
there.
inspection forms, like the information form or the addendum?
Well, the inspection form is kind of short, and if you ever get to where you're writing out a huge list of things, just make sure you say C attached addendum A or something, and you can write it out. But just be very, very specific. The more specific you can be, the less confusion you would have, and the whole
Does anyone
point of
use
this is not to
information
have problems at closing, not to have misunderstandings, not to have assumptions made by either party, okay?
So that's the form that you can put through there.
Anybody use the
A
information?
lot of people do ask if at closing, can I just give $2,000 to buyer's cash? Is that acceptable with any type of financing other than FHA, VA, or is that not acceptable,
No.
period?
No, you can't, there's no such thing
Okay.
as giving money to it,
Well, we know with VA and FHA, you sign something, say there's no side deals.
we-
Conventionally, you can't, unless the
You
mortgage,
sign at every closing, you sign.
so unless the mortgage company knows,
Mhm.
you can't do it that way.
Yeah.
Okay?
You can do gift
You
cards.
can adjust price,
Yeah, you can prepay something,
Yeah.
you
you know,
can
that
prepay
kind
a
of stuff.
contractor,
Lowe's for
right,
big range.
right. But yeah, no cash, and I know sometimes that's the easy way out, but that's gonna get you
Just
in
the
trouble.
purchase price.
Just purchase price, no
Yeah.
closing costs, a lot of different ways to address it, but don't be caught up giving money.
So what if it's, so I had 2 closings ago, chimney, they wanted it functional, the sellers just had it capped off, and bought the house 20 years ago and just never used it. So we made it functional, but there was things that the chimney sweeper suggests that we do, and I let the other agent know, like, hey, we're willing to do this if you guys split the cost of that, so it's 100%.
Right.
It is functional, but these could be addressed.
Right.
So what they did is they just cut a check and after closing, mailed it in my sellers. Is that fine?
After closing, if you've got the kind of faith to do that, yes.
Yeah.
After close, The whole thing is, and what the lenders care about is that you're not financing their down payment.
Gotcha.
That's the reason for all of that.
Or setting up a lien that could trump theirs by being recorded first, you know?
Yeah, that's why like in
That
gift
makes
letters, it says that.
They don't have to repay
No,
it.
doesn't have to be repaid,
So
so
they
it can't
can't
be a
put
lien.
Yeah, that makes
As a
sense.
lien,
You know.
that jumps in front of them. Remember, liens are prioritized, remember this last time, liens are prioritized by the date that they're filed, not by who holds the lien or the amount of, you could have $100 lien in front of a $600,000 mortgage as long as it was filed before the mortgage was on the title of the home.
Good way to get paid.
Yeah, yeah, good way to pay.
You know you're getting your money.
But if you have good contractors in your back pocket of people who are true professionals, like I would have no problem getting Action Electric before they did the work.
Oh, yeah.
I know Chad Means, I know Randy Means, they are going to do the work. You know, they're gonna honor their bid.
Right.
Louis Flooring, and I'm not, when you're on film, I'm not endorsing any certain company, but I know those guys. You know, if I pay them to replace carpet, they're gonna show up and replace carpet. I don't have to worry about that. So if they're doing something like that, I have no problem paying certain contractors up front, like concrete guy, things like that. They're legitimate businessmen. So, I think the only problem you get into with paying contractors up front is if you don't know them and they, you know, they're on their honor, so deal with honorable people. So,
How about questions? Any that we've touched on that you're wondering about or anything, you know, that's
do you
out?
feel you guys got anything out of this sitting here for an hour and a half?
That would be uneasy to have representing the buyer and closing on a property without the sellers moving out.
Being out of the property?
Yeah.
Happens all the
And
time.
someone,
I just say, I
Someone-
don't think it has to.
but you know, here's the thing. If they are in there, then have an agreement. You know, and this is the thing, it's like, oh, that's just gonna be for, you know, a day or something like that. You should put an agreement together, because what happens is, it's like the day that is fine, but then they're like, oh, you know, this thing happened at our house and we can't move out yet. And they're there for another week. Well, there should always be, if you don't move at that time that we've agreed to, then this happens. And make it heard. You know, I've seen
$1
people,
million,
huh?
like a rent back type?
Yeah, you know, like, well, it's, you can't get crazy, but you have to make it hurt. So if somebody, I've seen rent backs where it's like, you know, they're gonna pay you $50 a day, you know, for that period of time, for that week, because they have to, you know, get it closed and then get theirs closed, and all this has to happen. And that's all well and good, and everybody's happy and stuff. But the day that week is over, then it goes to 200 a day. Make it hurt, you know, so that it's a distinct advantage to the buyer if the seller's still in that property at that time. You know, I seen one where it was like $50 a day, and it was a family, and they're like, heck, it would cost them $150 a day to move into a hotel. So make it hurt, you know, so that you're protecting your people. As long as you protect them, you know,
Just so I'm
that's the
saying,
best
no,
you can do.
collecting that money is a whole different bar.
But I totally agree with you. It is hard to close without it being vacant.
But you also have to understand that the person that not vacated the home needs the proceeds from that sale of that to go perform on the other one.
Yeah.
And they might be waiting for those people to move out because they're waiting for the
Yeah,
sale.
and everyone's.
Everybody's a chain.
Those are the
So-
ones.
Yeah,
Just,
you
you
get
know,
4 or
and
5.
we-
I mean, if it was
this
elderly
business,
couple that's living
we
forever, they
operate
wanna-
with
yeah,
more
they
good
care
faith
less.
in this business than any business should. I mean, it's, if you really disclose to the public how much of good faith we operate on. You know,
Well, that's what goes back to us working with each other from different companies and like that. You have to.
everybody wants
The
guarantees.
reality is,
If someone wants guarantees this damn thing deal's done 2 weeks into, boy, we still just got through inspection, we need appraisal, we got title, we got underwriting, I mean, there are no guarantees. How many of you have actually been at a closing table and it bombed? I have, not only once, I mean, I've had to bomb plenty of bombs before, but actually at the closing table. It's like, you wanna talk about a buzzkill.
oh,
We just
yeah.
had one where the lender did they do a follow-up right away on the buyer's, verification of
Yeah,
employment.
DOE,
The
that's
buyer
right.
had completely signed all the documents, the seller had the proceeds check in hand, and then the whole deal fell apart. because we found out
Mine was the
violence.
same, mine was the same thing, the DOE came back where he quit his job.
Quit his job?
Quit his job.
That's smart.
Yes.
So don't tell them not to?
What's
Don't
that?
tell them not to?
These are the things that I've learned the hard way now. Now we have the do's and do nots of buying a home, and yeah, not quitting the job is up there. Not putting money into your bank account without it being sourced is up there.
My favorite
Not
one
going
is-
out and pulling credit. People get real excited about buying a home, so let's go to a furniture store and let's pull out $15,000
as
of
cash.
credit. And let's go out and buy all this furniture, and all of a sudden that messes up your DTI. I had a guy one time that bombed because he went and bought a motorcycle. Like, well, I hope you can live on that damn thing. You can live in this house. I mean, so that's why we're trying to add this class, actually, is to take our experiences of bad situations,
Yeah, it's like that.
teach you how to not have to go through those, so you can be better.
I had the buyer tell me this, they said it's 90 days, same as cash. They pull your credit and you sign.
Yeah. So don't do anything. Don't
Can't
do
do it.
it.
It's like,
No.
it's not working.
Advisory sellers, don't cancel your insurance until I physically give you your proceeds on your house.
Yep.
They might, in anticipation of closing, cut it off. All of a sudden, closing's 3-4 days late. There's no insurance on their home. And you can't ante back up for 4 days. It's a year at a time.
Oh, here's one that I really learned the hard way, is do not allow the sellers to shut their water off. Because they're gonna move out and they're not paying another damn day for those buyers that are moving into it. And then when they shut their water off, it breaks the valve. Because guess who gets to pay for that? The seller. So it's like, dude, seriously, what is
Pay
it?
that.
$4, $5, $6 a day
Yeah.
to have water on? Just relax, leave the water alone and let them transfer it into their names without screwing with the valve. Learned hard. That was $2,000 I never got to spend. Okay, any other questions, anything else that's going on that we could help with, do anything about? Nope.
You didn't give very long to give a problem.
I thought you might respond. It concerned me. Yeah, like, no, not a participant. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you coming and listening and trying to learn and be better. That's all we can do, is just keep trying to be better at what we do, serving the clients that we're working with, and being a good part of the realtor community. It's important, and it's our way, our belief as concepts.
In 2 more weeks, we'll start the seller portion of this 101 class. Do 2 classes of that, and then we have the closers coming in to talk about the closing process a little bit, and how to explain CDs to people, closing disclosures, all right? Go over title objections that they deal with that you're gonna see, small claims courts, child support, maybe IRS, which no way around the IRS. I think spoiler alert, IRS is getting paid.
Exactly right.
But name affidavits, you probably being the biggest, like a John Smith you're representing, and then, there's 900 John Smiths out there. And so just those type of things, how we deal with them, and those things that'll make you just that much more educated, that much more of a pro. Okay?
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
gonna have like a field trip where we're gonna go look at?
Yeah, we can do that. We can do that.
We do wanna do that again.
Help me out, since you've dug through these a lot of times, and Lance has been in construction his whole life, and
I have 2 houses south of Grand that are filled with crap we can all take out.
Come in, look around, take something out with you, right?
One of them has a raccoon out, the other one still has it in the basement.
Squirrel! Yes. Awesome. All right,
Thank you all so much.
before you leave, we're hashing this out.
Okay.
What?